All right. Get his ass over to a psychologist, get his mental game in order. And he might not even need to touch the sauce.
All right, guys, that was a fun one. The next myth, let's go into the fifth. And we kind of already touched on it already, Rick. Working out hard plus tons of steroids equal Mr. Olympia physique. So following up on what I said earlier, it's one of those things. Every time, they show maybe on Yahoo News or something, they'll show the Mr. Olympia champion. Okay, it doesn't get much action. Okay, most people can't name Mr. Olympia who are even in the gym. Okay, I mean, we don't really follow it, but let's say they put out an article or something. You'll see comments from people. Oh, that guy's on tons of juice. That guy's on tons of juice. Guys, that's a myth. It's not a myth that he's not on tons. That he's on tons of juice. Yes, he is on tons of juice, but it's not the juice that got him there. Like I said earlier, Everson Griffin. Okay, he was defensive tackle for the Minnesota Vikings. He was a free agent. He went to a new team this year. I think he's either a free agent or he's going to a new team. But anyway, he was a Pro Bowl defensive tackle, Minnesota Vikings. His brother, I interviewed him on a podcast, and his brother is also top 20 Mr. Olympia. I believe he was number 12 last year at the Olympia, 11th or 12th. So it's the genetics, guys. These guys have tremendous. If you want to be top 20 Mr. Olympia, you have to have the genetics. That's the number one thing you have to have. And then everything else that Rick mentioned, everything else I mentioned on top of it. You cannot just take tons and tons of steroids. And I've interviewed Boston Lloyd 3-4 times on this podcast as well. You guys can look up those episodes. And he came a long way mentally because he used to believe that. He used to think, yeah, I can take 4 grams of steroids a week and I'll be as high as that. And he's admitted, the last time he came on the podcast, he admitted, you know what, I was wrong. You can't just take tons of steroids and be Mr. Olympia. You can't just follow Ronnie Coleman's diet, Ronnie Coleman's workouts, Ronnie Coleman's steroid use, HGH use, insulin use, drug use, everything that Ronnie Coleman does, sleep like Ronnie Coleman, live like Ronnie Coleman, and be Ronnie Coleman. You can't. If you followed exactly what Ronnie Coleman did, you'd probably die of a heart attack within 6 months. You'd probably get injured in the gym because you'll be training way too hard. Your genetics don't allow you to train as hard as Ronnie Coleman. You would probably bankrupt yourself because you're spending all this money on food and steroids and HGH and all this other stuff you have to take. It's just not going to happen. And honestly, the guys who try to follow these professional bodybuilder steroid stacks, you know what happens to them? They just get fat. They just get fat. They get big, big, big and fat. They don't stay lean because if you eat the amount of food that Ronnie Coleman eats or any of these professional bodybuilders, you're just going to become obese. You're going to be 350 pound, 35% body fat because they have tremendous genetics. They can eat that much and get away with it because they have such tremendous genetics. That food that they're eating just gets partitioned into their muscles and grows their muscles. The food that you eat, same food that you eat as Ronnie Coleman, turns into fat, gets stored as fat in the body. Isn't that amazing? It's amazing genetics, guys.
Yeah. When it comes to professional bodybuilding, genetics plays a huge role, ton. You obviously have to enjoy hitting the gym hard. So you have to love the gym, 1. 2, your body has to have the genetics and you have to be able to handle the drugs. One thing you have to understand is that these guys, top professional level, they've been hitting steroids, some of them for a decade without pause. When you're already holding on to 50, 60 extra pounds of muscle mass that your body would naturally not be able to hold on to, you don't get to cycle off because your body will never make enough testosterone to support just these huge slabs of muscle that these guys keep on. So at that point, you have to keep your androgen levels sky high all of the time because as soon as they drop a little bit, as soon as they get close to high normal range, a bunch of that muscle starts to melt off. So your body has to be able to handle these drugs for years and not get sick, not get messed up from it. And a lot of guys just do a quick short cycle and they like we discussed in podcast 308 Super Draw, There's some guys are like lactating out their nipples and their back breaks out, and they have jaundice and just liver starts failing out of just a couple of cycles. And then you get top level pros that are using like orals for weeks and weeks on end, a ton of injectable steroids on top of a testosterone base of 1,000 mgs a week of test, and then peptides, and then SARMs in front of that, and they're trying almost anything you put in front of them. But they look great still, look awesome. So that's part of it. And look, and even if you do love hitting the gym, and even if your body can handle a ton of drugs, then you're going to get on stage and maybe your calves are just too small, or maybe your biceps aren't just connected the right way and they're lagging, or maybe your abs are shaped kind of fucked up, and then you stand next to a guy like Phil Heath or a guy like Ronnie, and all those years of training and all those expensive steroids, and you still look like shit next to them because they have those genetics and they could do it. So bodybuilding is that, dude. Just ton of commitment, lifelong endeavor, and genetics to match.
Yeah, it's a good one. So guys, next one. This is a one, myth or not. You don't need a PCT after SARMs. So for me, this depends. This depends on which SARM you're talking about, because some of these products are actually not SARMs in the first place. And, I can pull up all the SARMs that are sold by, on our forums and by most SARMs sources. The most popular one, GW 501-516, is actually not a SARM. It's a PPAR agonist. So you do not need a PCT if you use GW. You do not need a PCT if you use SR9009. Very, very similar to GW. It's a Rev ERBA agonist. So what that one does, they both actually help with fat loss and endurance. They are not hormonal. So no, you don't need a PCT with those. And in Osterine, if you run Osterine at 25 milligrams or less for 4 weeks or less, you don't need a PCT because it's not suppressive. But if you run it longer or you run at higher dose, you do need a PCT. Now, as far as LGD, you absolutely need a PCT with LGD. It's going to be suppressive. Not as suppressive as steroids, but it will be slightly suppressive. RAD, stronger. It's going to be a little more suppressive. And then you've got Andrine. It's suppressive. So you got to run a PCT with those. Now, MK677 Nutrabol, again, it's not a SARM. It's a GH secretog. And with that one, you don't need a PCT because it is not going to affect your HPTA. It's not going to affect your pituitary glands. So it depends. And, it just depends on which quote unquote SARM you're going to talk about. Anything else to add, Ray?
Yeah, and just like some of them don't affect you at all, there's some others that do affect you and will suppress you. Osterin being one of them. Osterin will take up androgen receptors, and so will displace testosterone out of these receptors. Testosterone won't be able to attach to them. There'll be more testosterone floating around your system for the aromatase enzyme to make estrogen, and it'll create the feedback loop to actually decrease your testosterone production. So if you take Osterin, you want to take even something like just AC Generate Classic on it with no Clomid, no anything, should be good. Look, when I've done SARMs, I've either done them with testosterone or with AC Generate. Why wouldn't I run SARMs just standalone? Why would I always use either testosterone injectable or a testosterone booster with it? Because they just work that much better with the testosterone. SARMs are good. Again, I keep saying this, we don't know what their side effects will be years and years down the line. But for now, they seem to be on the short term fairly side effect free. But just adding an androgen, adding the steroids with the SARMs just makes everything so much better. So if you're just trying to do like a good over the counter cycle that you can order with your credit card and and not worry about much. Um, GW and HG Generate ES. The ES will help boost testosterone, so that'll stay nice and high. Get GW, fat burning effects, maybe some ostarine in there too. So I've done that cycle a couple of times and really enjoyed it. The ostarine with the Carterin and my HG Generate ES. It's just been a beautiful, beautiful cycle to do. And obviously, I keep the ES going a full 4 to sometimes 6 weeks going after I stop the SARMs just to be on the safe side.
Next myth, guys. Number 7, all steroids and SARMs are legit quality. And listen, we all want to believe. We want to believe. You ever see like movie reviews? People, they'll go spend money to go see a movie, and after the movie, no matter how horrible the movie is, and most movies are horrible, but they'll go see the movie and they're like, oh, this is the best movie I've seen all year, blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, this movie got fucking like a 20% on Rotten Tomatoes. How the fuck is this the best movie of the year? Like, are you fucking stupid or something? But it's the same thing. We buy steroids. We spend $500, $1,000 on steroids and on SARMs. And we want to believe, that, yeah, this is legit. You go into the cycle. You want to believe I'm going to get the best results. I'm going to hit my personal records. I'm going to get big. I'm going to get strong. And then you run the cycle halfway through. You're like, fuck, I'm not getting any results. What the fuck is going on here? So then you go get blood work, and then you get the bad news. You see that your fucking steroids, they're fucking bunk, or they're underdosed, or your SARMs are fucking fake. They're not even really SARMs. So you finally figure out, you're like, fuck, I got screwed, man. Out of $1,000 I spent on this fucking cycle. Well, the reality is most steroids and most SARMs out there are either fake, underdosed, or not what they're labeled as. And that is because of many, many reasons. It's not always because the source themselves are purposely doing that, but it's because the sources just don't have the economic ability to test everything before they sell it to you. So they may get a batch of raws that might be really what they think it is, make the steroid, sell it to you, and then the next batch of raws they get from the exact same place in China is not really the same thing, is something completely different. It could be getting Primobolan raws, and then the next time, the exact same dealer from China sends them Deca raws. This shit happens all the time. So that's one of the myths, guys. That's one of the myths. You have to trust your source. You have to know the source that you're dealing with, and they have to be able to back up the shit they're selling to you. They can't just sell what they think is a specific steroid or a specific SARM, because eventually people are going to figure it out that, hey, something fishy is going on here.
Yeah, sometimes the source will get sent product that's underdosed, that's not of high purity. Other times they will have the orders but run out of a certain raw, where their supplier won't screw them, where their supplier will say, hey, we don't have this raw right now. And then the guy making it, the underground lab, just decides to change the compound on their own. Look, if you're the chemist mixing this stuff up, these raws become real familiar real quick. I'll give you an example. Testosterone propionate, short ester, stuff's more crystalline. It's more like closer to the consistency of something closer to sugar or flour. When you get into like Deca with the canoate ester, stuff becomes more the consistency of wax. When you have equipoise, which is the undecyclinated ester, that's oil. That's already liquid. If you drop the temperature just a tiny bit, it'll start to harden up. So these materials can become really familiar with them. Everything down to the smell and taste of the actual esters. So sometimes sources will send something that looks just like it is underdosed. That happens. But when a source that's making this stuff makes such a huge mistake is switching out Deca for Primobolan, that Primo is going to have a shorter, waxier consistency. The Deca is going to lean more towards being oil, more oily. You can tell what it is by looking at it, just because, again, the shorter esters, more crystalline, the longer esters become more of an oil. You could, it'll just be, it's not an easy mistake to make. How about that, guys? So yeah, sometimes sources get sent on underdosed product, but when the product switched out and it's not, and what's in it is not what you were trying to pay for, the source is doing it at the level, because it's so obvious when the powder is not what it is when you look at it, when you've worked with this thing over and over again.
So following up on that, myth number 8, you can tell the difference based on how steroids work in your body. Meaning, I'm going to take it a step further. I can remember back on the EF board, a moderator would say, "Oh yeah, you don't need to get blood work after PCT. I can tell by the way I feel that I'm recovered." And that's just stupid, because that doesn't mean shit. Just because you feel a certain way doesn't mean that you're still not suppressed, that your estrogen levels may not be low or high, that your pituitary glands are functioning correctly, that your LH and FSH are at good levels, that your testosterone are at good levels, that your cholesterol is at good levels. Doesn't mean shit. I mean, it really doesn't. So you really need to run blood work after cycle. You can't just go by how you feel. And then on cycle, you can't just run a cycle and be like, yeah, I'm running what I think is D-bol and I feel this way and I'm having these side effects. It must be D-bol. That's definitely a myth. I mean, no matter how experienced you are, your bodies are constantly changing. So the way something may affect you on cycle 1 may not affect you the same way on cycle 4, even if you're running the same compound. Our bodies change over time. Here's a perfect example. The guy who runs a bunch of D-bol, a bunch of tests, a bunch of DECA for a cycle, and he doesn't run an AI, and he gets away with it. He doesn't have any problems. But then 3 years later, he runs the exact same cycle, exact same dosages, same brand, same everything, same batch of steroids, and he ends up with gynecomastia. Perfect example. Well, I felt fine the first cycle doing things a certain way. Well, that's a myth. Just because you felt fine that particular time doesn't mean side effects won't change. Different situations change. It could be maybe your body fat was higher the second time you ran it. It could be something else. It could be your body just changing. So you really have to trust your source, know what you're using, and not go by how you feel. I really recommend blood work. Blood work is very, very important.
It depends what level you're at too, if you can tell the difference in the steroids. If you're not that experienced, if your diet is not on level, if you have a body fat in the teens, no, just stop it. You're not going to tell the difference. Maybe you'll be able to tell the difference in side effects from one steroid to the other on some of the real obvious things. But no, you're not going to be able to tell the difference in the steroids. Look, when you're a top level, like my buddy, he's a competitor. When he gets down to showtime, if he uses Turinabol, he holds more water, he says, than if he uses Anavar. And it's a difference because you'll see more or less striations depending which of those two he's using going up to competition. You, on the other hand, where you just can barely see your top 2-4 abs, like, you're not going to be able to tell the difference. Okay? So it really depends who you are, what level you're at, just how far you push your body and your physique. If you're pushing yourself to those levels, low single digits body fat and things like that, yeah, you'll be able to tell the difference. But if you're not, you're getting so much stuff that's been swapped out for something else that is not what you are paying for, and you just don't know it. It's been happening for years. You can't even tell the difference.
All right, guys. So steroid myth number 9. Guys on steroids look like they are on steroids. Walk into any franchise gym and you can look around, and I guarantee you that a majority of guys in there have used or are using steroids. Trust me. Because I know people, I know friends of mine who don't even work out. They haven't worked out in years. And if you talk to them, they'll say, yeah, I used steroids maybe back in college, maybe 10 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, they used steroids. It's so easy to get steroids. I mean, it's just as easy to get steroids as it is to go on Amazon and buy a book. That's how easy it is. So they're not hard to get. They're not that expensive. I mean, a vial of testosterone costs less than a car wash. So, and you know, these people, they've used steroids or they're using steroids in your franchise gym and they look like shit. I'm just being honest with you, Rick. They look like shit and they're weak. They can't even fucking bench 150, 200 pounds. They can't even bench 2 plates. They can't even squat 2 plates. So, you know, steroids are a tool. Okay, you have a Phillips head screwdriver, you have a flathead screwdriver, and your toolbox. It's a tool that you can use to take things to another level, to break a plateau, but they are not going to automatically turn you into the next Arnold Schwarzenegger. So this is the biggest myth we hear all the time. And on the flip side, I was natty myself. I lifted weights for 13 years before I ever touched steroids. And during that 13 years, people would accuse me of being on steroids. So that shit pissed me off. I was natural. I didn't take a goddamn thing. All I took was some creatine, some herbs here and there, some Fedosia, some Tribulus, stuff like that. I never took fucking steroids. 13 fucking. So you can look like you use steroids and now tons of steroids. That's my opinion.
Yeah, it goes both ways. I've met guys that use a ton of juice and look like shit. And I've met guys that look like they're on cycle and don't use anything, don't even know anything about it. It's an old man in my gym right now. Dude is 50. Never touched steroids in his life. He's got world-class arms. I mean, his fucking arms are incredible. You know, he doesn't have abs and, you know, he doesn't work out his legs to match them. But just on his arms alone, you would think, oh, this dude's some juice or something. It's because his arms are just incredible, world-class. Old guy, like 50. But no, never touched this stuff. Some people just have great genetics. And then there's some guys that I know that are using the sauce, and you could just see the changes in them over time, over the months. Where they were like small, and then they just get puffy and red, and then they get small again. And yeah, it's genetics plays a big part. Some people can just work hard, not even eat right, look great. Some people can watch their diet, take some steroids, work out, and they just don't get much of anywhere. I think a real key here is for you yourself to learn where you're at. If you've done big cycles and you've done small runs and you realize that taking 4 times the amount of steroids is not giving you 4 times the amount of results, you know, knowing and finding what dosage your progress and results begin to level off at, where what dosage and what amount of steroids your results begin to the curve begins to flatten, right? Then you'll have a better gauge of just how much source you need to get maximum results, and at what point you're just wasting your money and putting additional synthetic hormones in your body that you're just not getting all those benefits from. So, I mean, when I tell you guys, when I personally cycle, I keep it under a gram. I only do test or EQ. Once in a while, I'll once a year, maybe I'll do a little bit extra something else different besides that. But just need a little bit and look like you do just a little bit of juice. But yeah, I've done big, huge cycles with, a gram of test as a base. and then 3 other steroids on top of that in my 20s. I've done all of this. And I can tell you, I don't think I got like extremely 4 or 5 times the results running, 2 grams, 2.5 grams a week of steroids than I do running, 5 to 700 mgs a week. I mean, and maybe I had to go through that journey to learn that. But most people out there only need just a 500, 600, 700, and your results will flatten out. Anything more than that, it's diminishing return.